What would you do if someone offered you a deal so massive, so life-changing, that it could secure your family for generations, and all you had to do was walk away from the very thing you helped build? That's the impossible question now hanging over Caitlin Clark, the most magnetic force women's basketball has ever seen. The headlines are buzzing with one number, $200 million. A number so big it doesn't even sound real. A number that has sports executives sweating, agents whispering behind closed doors, and an entire professional league fighting to keep its future from slipping away. The rumors spreading like wildfire isn't coming from an NBA team, a sneaker company, or even a European powerhouse. It's coming from a brand new, heavily funded international league backed by Middle Eastern wealth described as virtually unlimited. Not a challenge, not a negotiation, a takeover. And the target is clear, the face of the WNBA, the player who just brought more eyes to the sport than anyone in history. While fans were celebrating record attendance, viral highlights, and sold-out arenas, another story was being written behind the scenes. Quiet phone calls, secret meetings, contracts so huge they make the WNBA's pay scale look like pocket change. For decades, women's basketball players have battled for respect, for visibility, for a fair shot at financial stability. But suddenly, that struggle has collided with an offer that tears the entire system apart. Because this isn't just about paying players more, it's about removing the WNBA from the equation entirely. Caitlin Clark has already become a household name. Her popularity is bigger than some NBA franchises. She fills arenas on the road, sells every jersey she touches, and shifts television ratings overnight. She's not just a rising star. She might be the reason millions of people even tuned into women's basketball this year. And now someone with the deepest pockets in global sports is knocking on her door with a contract that could make her one of the highest paid athletes on earth. Not the highest paid woman, the highest paid athlete. Here's what makes the situation even more intense. Behind every highlight, every sponsorship, every sold-out crowd, the WNBA has been leaning on one truth. Caitlin Clark has the power to transform the league into something truly unstoppable. She wasn't supposed to be a star in the WNBA. She was supposed to be a star who saves the WNBA. A player whose presence could finally push the league out of the shadows and into undeniable mainstream respect. But now there's a new option. One where she skips the slow climb to financial equality and jumps straight into generational wealth the moment she signs her name on the dotted line. So what happens to the league if she leaves? What happens to the momentum, the TV deals, the hype, the belief that women's sports in America were finally about to take that once-in-a-lifetime leap forward? For the first time ever, the WNBA is staring down a competitor that doesn't play by the same economic rules and doesn't care if a few American traditionalists get hurt along the way. The offer is enormous, the stakes are bigger, and the consequences could reshape the entire future of women's basketball. But before we can understand how dangerous this moment really is, we need to look at who is behind this power move and what they're planning next. Somewhere far from the packed arenas and roaring American crowds, a new player has stepped onto the court, and they didn't come to play fair. While the WNBA has spent years fighting for gradual progress, this international powerhouse skipped straight to the final chapter. Their strategy is simple: buy the biggest names in the sport and flip the entire basketball world upside down. The organization behind these offers is tied to a sports empire with the kind of funding most leagues could only dream of. We're talking wealth so massive that losses don't matter, budgets don't matter, traditional rules don't matter. If they want a player, they don't negotiate, they overwhelm. And according to insiders, their mission is clear: build the most dominant women's basketball league on the planet. No patience, no slow growth, no waiting for television deals to catch up. Think for a moment about what that means. Women's basketball in the US has finally captured the spotlight. Record TV ratings, mainstream excitement, stars with global followings. Everything the WNBA has worked towards for nearly 3 decades is finally happening. And that's exactly when this new league appears, offering life-changing money with one expectation: leave the WNBA behind and make this new venture your true home. The scariest part? They didn't show up announcing a challenge. There were no public press releases, no flashy logo reveals, no loud promises to build a better future. They arrived quietly, making discreet calls to agents, sending private proposals, and hand-picking the most valuable targets in the sport. The goal isn't to compete with the WNBA, it's to absorb its talent and become the new center of gravity for women's basketball. And if this feels familiar, it should. We've seen this exact playbook before. A sudden influx of never-ending money dropped into a sport that wasn't prepared for a global bidding war. In golf, that strategy didn't just disrupt the system, it shattered it. Now, women's basketball is seeing the first cracks. This is no small startup or hopeful experiment. This is a global power play backed by a financial force that cares more about influence and prestige than profit or patience. The WNBA knows how to fight for attention, for sponsorships, for incremental gains. But how do you fight against someone who doesn't need to win the argument with logic or numbers? They can simply buy the outcome they want. What's happening right now is only the opening move. The new league hasn't even officially launched its publicity machine yet. These are just the early whispers, the quiet before the storm. And already the WNBA is feeling the pressure. Because the first player targeted wasn't just a proof of concept, she was a message, and that message would hit the league where it hurts.
The first name to break the silence wasn't Caitlin Clark. It wasn't Angel Reese. It wasn't one of the league's MVPs. It was someone whose value has always been undeniable, yet never fully recognized within traditional WNBA economics: Sophie Cunningham. Sources claim she's already secured a contract with the International League worth more per season than everything she made in 6 years of WNBA basketball combined. And that detail isn't random. It's a message delivered with precision. Sophie has become a fan favorite, fiery on the court, marketable off it, a recognizable personality with a loyal following. She's not the face of the league, but she's the kind of player who pulls attention when she's involved. The type of player every franchise wants because she brings energy, excitement, and visibility. And that's exactly why she was chosen first. By targeting someone just outside the superstar spotlight, the new league sent a chilling signal. If we're paying this much for her, imagine what we'll offer you. This wasn't a blockbuster signing meant to make headlines around the world. It was a psychological play. Think of every WNBA player watching this news unfold. They know Sophie's value. They know what she means to her teammates and her fans. And if she's suddenly holding a contract that could set her up for life, the quiet conversations begin instantly. Teammates start wondering about their own options. Agents start running numbers. Players who spent years accepting financial limitations suddenly see a door wide open, and on the other side, more money than they ever believed women's basketball would offer. And for the WNBA, that is the true danger. Not the one player who leaves, but the dozens who follow her example. Because once the first domino falls, you can't stop the chain reaction. Sophie Cunningham wasn't picked because she was the biggest star available. She was picked because she was the perfect star to test the system's weakness. Accessible, respected, watched by fans and players alike. Her departure proves one terrifying reality. The WNBA cannot defend its roster with passion alone. Love for the league doesn't pay bills. And loyalty, even the strongest kind, has limits when life-changing wealth is suddenly on the line. That was the warning shot. And it hit the target perfectly. But if the first move shocked everyone, the next one could change the entire sport forever. If Sophie Cunningham was the warning shot, Caitlin Clark is the nuclear strike everyone fears. The most electrifying talent women's basketball has ever seen, barely 1 year into her professional career, is suddenly the center of a global tug of war. And the numbers being floated, they sound unreal. Multiple reports claim the Saudi-backed league is preparing a contract worth somewhere between $100 million and $200 million over multiple years. Whispered figures that will make her richer than some NBA all-stars, richer than iconic athletes who spent a decade climbing to the top of their sports. And she would achieve that before most rookies have even settled into their apartments. Let's put the math in perspective. Caitlin Clark's rookie salary in the WNBA sits around $76,000 a year. That's less than what some NBA players spend on luxury vacations. It's less than many assistant coaches earn. It's a number that has been criticized for years, especially considering Clark's impact on ticket sales, jersey revenue, and TV ratings. She doesn't just bring attention to the WNBA, she brought the spotlight. Sponsors know it, networks know it, fans know it. The sport is experiencing a cultural shift because of her. She's the kind of athlete who gets a standing ovation in every city, even the ones cheering for her to lose. She's selling out arenas that never sold out before. She's turning casual observers into hardcore fans overnight. In short, she isn't just a part of the WNBA's success, she is the success. So if someone steps in offering money that completely wipes away the WNBA's financial limitations, money that sets her for life, her family for life, and maybe even grandchildren for life, how do you say no? The rumored offers aren't just better than what the WNBA can give. They're 20, 40, even 50 times higher.
And that's where the league's panic becomes visible. Behind the confident smiles and polished press releases, insiders say the anxiety is growing fast, because the truth is unavoidable. If Caitlin Clark leaves, the WNBA doesn't just lose a player, it loses its biggest selling point, its momentum engine, its ticket to mainstream growth. But here's the twist. The money isn't the only appeal. Reports suggest this international league wants to build the entire brand around Clark. Her face, her style, her electrifying gameplay that broke the internet long before she ever turned pro. They aren't offering her a spot, they're offering her the throne. Imagine being told that instead of waiting years for the league to evolve around you, you could step into a new world where you become the defining force from day one, where rules, marketing, and promotion revolve around what you represent, where every game is a global event because you're in it. It's the kind of opportunity that alters a career, a sport, and a legacy. Still, Clark's decision won't just affect her bank account. It could alter the destiny of every woman who dreams of playing professional basketball. If she leaves, others will follow. If she stays, she becomes the guardian of the WNBA's future. And right now, the clock is ticking. The offers are real, and the pressure is crushing. But to understand why this moment feels like a full-scale emergency inside the league offices, we need to look at the painful reality the WNBA has been trying to hide for decades. Because the biggest stars in the world are playing in a league that financially can't keep up, and the cracks are starting to show. To understand how real this threat is, you have to look at the numbers the WNBA has tried to keep out of the spotlight. Because for all the progress, all the excitement, all the talk about growth, the league's financial foundation is still incredibly fragile. The maximum salary for a WNBA player hovers around $250,000, not per game, not per month, per year. And that's the absolute ceiling. Most players don't come close to even that. Now zoom out and look at the bigger picture. An entire team, a full roster of professional athletes, must operate under a salary cap that's less than what some NBA bench players earn in a single month. That imbalance is not a secret inside the league. Players feel it every time they look at their paychecks, every time they board a commercial flight after a back-to-back, every time they see the revenue they help generate go somewhere else. For decades, WNBA athletes have accepted this reality because there was no alternative. If you wanted to make real money, you packed your bags and went overseas during the off-season. Russia, Turkey, Italy, China. Players risked burnout and injury because that was the only path to financial stability. The WNBA wasn't the primary income source. It was the side gig. But now, the world has changed. The attention is here. The fans are here. Corporate sponsors are finally showing up. TV viewership is skyrocketing. Yet somehow, despite all of this momentum, the players are still not seeing those gains land in their bank accounts. So the question becomes unavoidable. If the league is growing, why aren't the players growing with it? Every time a headline proudly declares record viewership, every time a new TV partnership is announced, the athletes ask the same thing. Where does that money go? Because it definitely isn't showing up as life-changing salaries. And that's where the crisis truly starts. When the financial reality no longer matches the energy, the excitement, or the promises being made, players begin to feel like they're the only ones sacrificing.
The commissioner tells them, "Be patient, good things take time." But how do you preach patience to someone whose career may only last 10 years if everything goes right? How do you tell a star who's packing arenas that she should be grateful for a salary that wouldn't even crack the top 300 in men's basketball? The WNBA has always prided itself on being more than a league, a movement, a fight, a symbol of progress. But symbols don't pay mortgages. Movements don't guarantee retirement. And progress that takes too long starts to look like excuses. So when a new league appears offering guaranteed millions right now, without waiting for future negotiations or slow economic growth, it exposes a truth the WNBA hoped would never be tested. Passion can build a sport, but money decides where the stars stay. And if the WNBA can no longer provide both, then loyalty becomes a luxury very few players can afford. The fear isn't just that one superstar could leave. It's that Caitlin Clark might be the first of many. And once the exodus begins, there may be no stopping it.
But the danger isn't just hypothetical anymore. The dominoes are lined up, and the next one could fall faster than anyone expected. If Caitlin Clark leaves, the WNBA doesn't just lose a star, it loses the anchor holding the league's future in place. And that's where the nightmare truly begins. Because once the biggest name departs, everyone else starts asking the same question. Why am I staying behind? Professional athletes are competitive by nature, but they are also real people with real financial futures to consider. Loyalty feels noble until it becomes the reason you missed out on the kind of security most people only dream of. Rumors suggest that other stars are already on the radar of this international league. Players like Reese, A'ja Wilson, and other major names reportedly have representatives who have at least listened to calls from abroad. Not because they don't love the WNBA, but because they see what's happening and they understand the moment. They fought too long for too little to ignore a chance to finally be compensated like the stars they are. This is exactly how the strategy worked in golf. First, a few bold names took the leap. Then the floodgates opened. Suddenly, tournaments lost their prestige, sponsors bailed, and fans realized they were no longer watching the best talent in the world, just whoever stayed behind. The PGA Tour didn't collapse overnight, but its position of power did. And eventually, the organization was forced into a merger it once claimed would never happen. The WNBA's version of that scenario would be even more devastating. The league isn't just building toward mainstream acceptance, it is actively dependent on a handful of superstars to keep that growth alive. Remove some of them, even just 3 or 4, and the product changes instantly. Ticket sales drop, TV ratings slip, brands that were just starting to invest suddenly hesitate. The momentum that took decades to build evaporates almost overnight. And remember, these athletes aren't just basketball players, they're cultural icons. They're role models for the next generation. They're the ones inspiring young fans to show up in jerseys, to watch every game, to believe women's sports deserve equal respect. But inspiration doesn't pay millions. Inspiration doesn't erase the fear that one injury could end everything. Inspiration doesn't guarantee a lifetime of stability. So imagine this scenario, one that insiders fear is not far-fetched. Caitlin Clark signs first. The shockwaves ripple instantly. Reese, unwilling to be left behind, accepts her own life-changing offer. A'ja Wilson sees the writing on the wall and chooses a financial future no one could ever criticize her for taking. Others follow. The stars disappear, not because they wanted to abandon the WNBA, but because they finally had a real choice. Suddenly, the league that just celebrated its greatest season becomes a developmental system, a stepping stone for the world's true women's basketball powerhouse overseas. Fans would still love the game, players would still compete, but the spotlight would shift permanently. That's the fear keeping executives awake at night. Not competition, but irrelevance. And the moment the first major signature hits the paper, that fear becomes reality. But this crisis does more than threaten the league financially. It forces every player to confront a difficult moral crossroads between loyalty, progress, and personal security. Because the money isn't the only complication in this story. The most complicated part of this entire situation isn't even the money, it's the message that comes with it. Because these offers aren't coming from a traditional sports organization with decades of history in basketball. They're reportedly backed by international interests with motives that go beyond wins and losses. And that's where the debate becomes emotional. Many fans see this as a breakthrough opportunity, the first time women's basketball players could earn the kind of wealth that matches their impact. Athletes who've given everything to the sport would finally be rewarded with contracts that don't force them to choose between chasing their dreams and securing their future. To those supporters, the offer feels like overdue justice. But others look at who is funding this new league and ask harder questions. Questions about human rights. Questions about political strategy. Questions about how sports can be used to reshape global perception. Critics argue that this isn't just about growing women's basketball. It's about softening how the world views certain countries and their policies. And that creates a moral dilemma no athlete ever expected to face.
Do you take the deal that changes your life forever, even if some fans believe it's helping rewrite a bigger, more complicated narrative? Some players may decide that financial security for themselves, their families, and future generations is worth the criticism. They'll say it's easy to judge from the outside when you aren't the one sacrificing time, health, and youth for a fraction of what the sport is worth. And they're not wrong. Careers are short. Nothing is guaranteed. One injury, one unlucky twist, and everything can change. Others might feel the weight of the jersey they wear, the symbolism of the WNBA, the pride of pioneering a league that has always fought for something bigger than basketball. To them, accepting that money could feel like stepping away from a movement they've helped build with sweat and struggle. There is no universally right answer, only deeply personal ones. And whichever path the player chooses, the public will have opinions, loud ones. Social media will erupt with debates, praise, and criticism. Friends might celebrate the victory. Strangers might question the decision. The spotlight will grow even hotter. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, A'ja Wilson, any star who receives an offer will face more than a business decision. They will face a reputation decision, one that travels far beyond the court. Signing could elevate them into an entirely new financial category. Staying could turn them into heroes of loyalty and leadership. Either way, the consequences will echo through every arena in the world. This is no longer a simple story about sports or salaries. It's about values, identity, and what success is supposed to look like. But while fans argue online and players weigh impossible choices, there is one person whose future might be tied to the outcome more than anyone else. Because if this talent shift actually begins, the WNBA isn't the only thing on the line. A leader is about to be judged, and her job might not survive the verdict. Inside the WNBA offices, the pressure is building fast. When a league faces a crisis of this size, somebody must answer for it. And according to multiple reports, eyes are turning toward Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. Fair or not, leadership in professional sports is judged on one unforgiving metric: can you keep your stars? Everything else, viewership records, sponsorship deals, cultural buzz, becomes irrelevant if the biggest names walk away. Engelbert took the job with a mission: grow the league to a point where the athletes finally feel supported, respected, and properly compensated. And in many ways, she has delivered major wins. The WNBA has never been more visible or more celebrated. But success can turn into expectation overnight, and expectations can turn into demands the moment they are threatened. Insiders claim that behind closed doors, team owners are becoming anxious, and in some cases, frustrated. They invested heavily in a future built around players like Caitlin Clark, counting on her rising star to drive revenue and long-term growth. So when news breaks that a rival league could offer her, and others, contract numbers the WNBA can't remotely match, those owners reportedly start asking a brutal question: did leadership underestimate how fast the world was changing? Publicly, Engelbert has been quiet about the rumored offers. No bold statements, no emergency plan announced, no reassurance strong enough to calm rising fears. Supporters say she's being smart, staying measured until real confirmation arrives. Critics argue the silence feels like unpreparedness, a sign that the league was caught off guard by a threat they never thought they'd have to face. Meanwhile, players have voiced their own concerns throughout the season. Some felt safety issues weren't handled strongly enough. Others expressed frustration that financial progress still hasn't matched the moment. And when players feel unheard, confidence in leadership begins to crack, even if the commissioner isn't the one directly responsible. The possibility now being whispered in league circles is the one Engelbert likely never expected to hear this soon. If Caitlin Clark leaves, her resignation may not be optional. Not as punishment, not because she didn't care, but because the optics would be impossible to overcome. How do you explain losing the most influential player in league history at the exact moment she was supposed to elevate the sport into a new era? But here's the harsh truth. Even if leadership changes, the underlying problem remains. The WNBA can't suddenly produce billions of dollars in revenue. It can't magically triple salaries overnight. A new commissioner wouldn't fix the economic imbalance, only mask the symptoms for a little longer. Kathy Engelbert is in a corner no leader would want to stand in. Stay silent and watch the panic grow. Speak up and admit the league is fighting a battle it can't win financially. Either way, the pressure continues to rise. But even with all of this uncertainty, some insiders insist there may still be one move left, one risky swing that could rewrite the narrative if executed perfectly. And it might be the only shot the WNBA has left to protect its future. With pressure mounting and time slipping away, the WNBA may be forced into a move that was never supposed to be part of the plan. A desperate, high-risk gamble that could either save the league's future or expose just how vulnerable the business truly is. According to several reports, league executives have quietly discussed the possibility of doing something unprecedented, ripping open the collective bargaining agreement years early and reshaping the entire financial model overnight.
Right now, the CBA runs through 2027. It was designed for gradual growth, small salary bumps, modest revenue sharing, long-term promises built on patience. But patience becomes a luxury when someone else is offering life-changing money today. So the WNBA could approach the players' union with a proposition that sounded impossible just months ago. Dramatically higher caps, larger player revenue percentages, and a new category of superstar contracts that break the old limits entirely. Imagine Caitlin Clark being the test case, a contract worth a few million a year marketed as a revolutionary moment for women's sports. For the WNBA, that would be a historic leap. For this rival league, it would barely compete with the numbers they can float without blinking. The harsh reality remains. Even the most aggressive change the league can afford still leaves players choosing between significantly improved salaries and generational wealth somewhere else. Every path the WNBA could take requires sacrifice. Bigger salaries would mean deeper operating losses for team owners who already rely on outside support to keep the league stable. The NBA could increase funding, but even that wouldn't close the gap against Middle Eastern wealth described as virtually endless. And if the league relies too heavily on short-term cash injections, it risks collapsing financially down the road, sinking the very future it's trying to protect. That's the impossible corner the league is trapped in. Stand still, and stars might walk away. Move too fast, and the entire business structure could crack. There is no clean fix, no easy rescue, no guarantee. So what does the WNBA do? Deny the rumors and hope they fade? Fight publicly and risk losing anyway? Or swing big and pray the hit lands before the clock runs out? Because the next signatures aren't just contracts, they are turning points in history. If Caitlin Clark chooses the WNBA, she buys the league time to adjust, time to evolve, time to build a financial system that finally matches the passion on the court. But if she accepts a deal abroad, the league's most important era could end before it ever truly began. This isn't a negotiation anymore. This is survival. And while fans celebrate highlights and rivalries, a silent countdown has already started. One that leads directly to the most pivotal decision women's basketball has ever faced. Right now, the entire future of women's basketball rests on a moment that hasn't happened yet. A choice one player must make. Caitlin Clark didn't ask for this responsibility. She didn't step onto the court to become the center of a global power struggle. She just played the game better, harder, and more electrifying than anyone had ever seen. And because of that, the fate of a league, a movement, and possibly an entire sport now revolves around her next move. If she stays in the WNBA, she becomes more than a star. She becomes a foundation. The player who carried the sport into primetime and refused to let anything tear that progress away. The loyal face of a league still fighting for its place in the world. The symbol of a new generation that refuses to settle for slow change. But if she leaves, she becomes the trailblazer of a revolution. The athlete who finally forced the world to pay women what they're worth. The first to take a leap so bold that others would have no choice but to follow. There is no wrong answer. But whichever path she chooses, everything changes. The WNBA has never stood on a cliff like this. Behind the cheers, behind the sold-out crowds, behind every highlight broadcast around the world, there is a race against time happening out of sight. Executives are scrambling, owners are debating, agents are fielding calls, players are quietly asking one another what they would do if a life-altering offer landed in their hands next. And you can feel it, the suspense, the tension, the uncertainty. Something big is coming, something history-making. The moment Caitlin Clark announces her decision, women's basketball will either ignite into the global powerhouse it's been fighting to become, or split into a new world where loyalty battles against opportunity, and the game we love looks very different than it does today. So tell me, what do you think she should do? Should she stay and elevate the WNBA from within? Or take the deal that could make her one of the highest-paid athletes alive? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because when this decision arrives, every voice is going to matter. This story isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning.